Okay, good morning. Uh, Welcome to the last few days of summer. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thank you for joining me again this week at our early start time. This is the 79th installment of my weekly virtual office hour address. We've now reached 550 days since the March 16th, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. 18 months ago, I converted my weekly coffee shop hours into this weekly live stream address, and I haven't missed a week since. People still say they enjoy hearing from their mayor each week, whether they watch it live or somewhat delayed. These weekly sessions are really good because they allow me to take a look back at the last 2 weeks or so, and they also allow me to provide you some updates, some news, answer some of your questions, and of course, just pass on some general words of encouragement. So I'm also following up a televised session with the in-person meetings at the coffee shop. And, this actually marks my 5-year anniversary of holding coffee shop hours at Bean Scene. So, 5 years ago, I got sworn into council, September 13th, 2016. And that Tuesday night, I got sworn into council. And then, that first Friday, I started my coffee shop hours. And it's actually been fantastic because it allows me to meet with residents. And, it expanded from first 8 to 10 a.m., 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., to about 7:30, 7 o'clock, to 10, 11, 12. Sometimes I didn't get out of there until almost 1 o'clock, just because, meeting with people, and people could, email me and reserve, and they still can reserve, 15-minute or 30-minute block. And so that, people know that they have a specific time with the mayor. You can drop in for your 5-minute question if you want, but it's actually been very useful from a time management standpoint, to sit down and people know that they have to be focused because they only have 15 minutes. It isn't a hour coffee shop time, which, normally when I meet someone for coffee, it's always at least 45 minutes or an hour, if not more. But it's actually been good from that standpoint, from a time management standpoint, to be able to meet with people and, have them bring their issues to the mayor. So, thank you for meeting with me. Thank you for allowing me to continue to represent and work for Sunnyvale. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, and wearing your mask, getting your vaccination. A few months ago, I started changing my background art every week, and this is art provided by Sunnyvale artists. And so today's piece is called Fall, and it's by Kataki Adi. And I thought it was especially appropriate, given that um, given that ultimately, this is the beginning of fall, or at least next week is the beginning of fall. And so, I thought it was actually a really nice piece, a nice pastoral piece with the horses in the foreground, and the trees changing colors in the background. Very nice piece. And so if you are interested in purchasing this piece, you can just contact me, and I will put you in contact with the artist. So, that's always fantastic, helping out local artists. So with that, let's go ahead and get started and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. Last Monday was Labor Day, so city offices and the library were closed. So it was a little kind of shorter week. Last Monday was also the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. So thanks to the local family again who helped me explore some of my Jewish heritage. They allowed me into their home and to help celebrate their traditions. So I appreciate that quite a bit. And then last Wednesday was council, and we had city council had a special hearing. We normally meet on Tuesdays, but we were there for one thing, and it was review the decision of the Planning Commission from July on the eastern portion of Fremont Corner. So it's a special development project for mixed-use development on the east half. So you kind of, the developers split that site into kind of three different locations. So the east half where Jake's is, and the dance studio, the center half where 24-hour fitness, and the western half where currently the Longhorn is and several restaurants. But it would allow council to kind of go through and do a closer review of what had been proposed there. So it was 54-story townhome condos, as well as 8,000 square feet of commercial space. And so we had a lot of discussions about, that project. This is our first SB 330 project. And so what that does is, it's one of the many state laws that's come into place over the last few years, which allows the developer to kind of streamline some of the process, reduce the number of outreach meetings and the number of meetings that it goes forward with in order to get approval. And so, there are definitely some good things from that project. Updating that shopping center, which is a little bit older, adding the mixed-use component. So maintaining, a place for Jake's restaurant and the Longhorn and some smaller locations in that eastern half, and also building some much needed housing. Of course, SB 330 allows them to waive certain city requirements like undergrounding the power supplies. Basically the power lines that were at the rear property line. So they are allowed to waive that from a development standpoint. I'm not completely happy with that. I think it's very difficult to underline power lines, and the best chance is when we're doing large projects like this. And so wasn't really happy with that. But in discussing, other conditions of approval that we might be able to do, one of the positive things that we came up with was that we could actually go through and add some additional trees, which added for possible parking lot shading. So from that standpoint, it was a positive sort of thing to do because we got a little more parking lot shading that wasn't there when initially approved by the Planning Commission. So that was good from that standpoint. And then last Thursday, President Biden had an announcement on ratcheting up the vaccination requirements. And so this was kind of 6 different things, but the biggest ones were he will require executive branch employees and federal contractors to get vaccinated with no option to test for COVID-19 as an alternate. So that's one of the big, differences, that you get the vaccine or you can't in most places now, or you get the vaccine or you get tested on a weekly basis, and that's what we're doing from a city standpoint. He's requiring that the federal contractors and executive branch employees get vaccinated. And then from the Department of Labor is looking at draft requirements that all employers with companies over 100 employees be vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week. So they're doing that from a Department of Labor standpoint, and multiple companies have already done that, put that requirement in place, but this is trying to force all companies over 100 employees to do that implication. And then, of course, the president was increasing availability for testing and masking, making them both affordable and convenient. So basically working on production as far as that's concerned, and doing production incentives for certain companies. And then also the TSA will be doubling mask fines. So if you're not wearing your mask, I think it's currently $500, and they're talking about moving that to $1,000 for fines for people who won't follow what the flight attendant is saying. And then last Saturday was September 11th, and there was a small ceremony, so to commemorate the 20 years since 9/11, and that happened at Fire Station 2. And I just want to thank the public safety officers, past and present council members who showed up, as well as some of the public who showed up to celebrate and commemorate, that that day. It is a day of remembrance. We'll be honored for those who lost their lives that day, and thank them for their sacrifice. And it was really touching, and it brought back some big memories from my standpoint. 20 years ago, my wife and I were in Vancouver for a long weekend, and we were actually supposed to be flying back Tuesday morning uh, from Vancouver. And so we were at the airport when the towers fell. And so it was very much an emotional time, and for our standpoint to be not just away from home, but even out of the country and trying to find a way to get back home. Ultimately, we took our rental car to Seattle, and try to turn it in there, try to turn it, our Canadian rental car in for a U.S. rental car so that we could drive home when ultimately Seattle, so it was several days in Vancouver, and then finally giving up and saying, okay, we're just going to drive home. But it's emotional time for a lot of people. It really did change the U.S. in so many ways, and change the world as brought the world together and the U.S. together in response to that horrible tragedy. So it was good to celebrate that 20 years in a solemn ceremony at Fire Station 2, and thanks to everyone who was there, or who was there in their thoughts. So thank you very much. Also on Saturday, County Supervisor Simidian had his office hours, and so he's been doing that for multiple years now. His office hours at farmers markets. So the county Supervisor Simidian represents 8 different cities around the the county, and so from that standpoint, he goes, every week or two, or at least tries to do once a month, goes to their farmer markets and spends an hour there, trying to meet with people, answer their questions from a county standpoint. So, I dropped by for the second half of his time at the market, and it was good to meet with some residents, answer some of their questions. It's always, doesn't matter where I go, the people always have questions for their mayor, and so always happy to do that. On Sunday, there was an Evelyn Avenue bike infrastructure ride. And so, this was planned between, Mountain View council member Pat Showalter, former council member Lenny Siegel from Mountain View, and me. And we had about 50 people show up, and it was actually really good from that standpoint, as we, and even a few staff members showed to kind of talk about what's upcoming for the Evelyn Avenue corridor from a infrastructure standpoint. So, first we started out Stevens Creek Trail, and in the long run, we're extending Stevens Creek Trail from where it ends from Dale Heatherstone right now to Remington, and then Remington to Fremont Avenue. So that's one of the positive things that VTA Measure B funds from 2016 is funding. We're also looking at doing a underground pathway for bikes and peds at Bernardo, so that will go under the Caltrain tracks as well as under Central Expressway and come up on the far side. So that's one of the things that's underway. And then of course, there's the Evelyn Trail that we talked about previously, and this is one of the things that we're trying to get added into the Moffett, or into the Mountain View active transportation plan, into their transportation plan. But we added it last year from the Sunnyvale Caltrain station to Bernardo to create, basically push the lanes of traffic to the south, and then move the bike lanes in a protected area between our Sunnyvale Caltrain station and hopefully the Mountain View station. And so they're already doing a cycle track from the Caltrain station to the entrance of Stevens Creek Trail on Evelyn. And so now we're looking at, hopefully, and I've been working with them to kind of continue that from Mountain View to Bernardo. So where it ends at, where it's currently planned to stop at Stevens Creek Trail entrance, all the way to the Bernardo, and kind of connect up that whole corridor to make it safe for bikers and pedestrians as much as possible. So it was good from that standpoint. It was about, a 4.5 mile ride, but it was good to go along that corridor, talk about what improvements each of our cities are doing, and trying to make it safer for all those people that want to do active transportation. And then, from our standpoint, that Evelyn Trail got funding from the state budget. So thanks to Senator Josh Becker for getting that added to the state budget. It was really good because this was envisioned, and I envisioned it about 15 years ago, and ultimately, it got shot down 15 years ago. It came back to council about 5 years, or about 4.5 years ago. It got funded, and it took multiple years before it finally got added to our plan. And now it's actually funded from an actual project standpoint. So looking forward to that moving forward as quickly as possible. Monday was a personal milestone. It was September 13th, which made it 5 years ago that I was sworn into council. I was elected in August of 2016 in a special election, and finally sworn in on that September 13th. And it's been a good, sometimes strange journey, to say the least. But I just want to thank the residents for supporting me along the way. And I moved from council member to vice mayor to mayor, to our first, to our last selected mayor by council, to our first directly elected mayor. But it's actually been very good from that standpoint, and I appreciate all the support that I've gotten from all kinds of people in the community, and I really feel honored to represent such a diverse community and value what we've been able to do here in Sunnyvale. So thank you for that. And it was good to kind of reminisce from a certain standpoint on where I was 5 years ago, and a lot more gray hair now, but happy to be your mayor, and looking forward to continuing to work for Sunnyvale for a while now. Tuesday, of course, was election day. So it was, not that, some people hadn't heard about it, but lots of publicity in the last 3 weeks or so. Multiple ballot boxes around the city for people to drop off their ballots. Personal voting centers were also open, last weekend and up through election night. As everyone has, I'm sure, heard, Governor Newsom survived the recall with more than 60% of the positive votes. So things will continue pretty much as status quo. But of course, now he's kicking off running for next year's primary. So this was one of the things about the recall election. It was a temporary sort of thing. We're only almost exactly a year away from the next gubernatorial election. So we'll see how the primary shapes up as far as next year. But this was a good sign for Governor Newsom, although it did show that there are quite a few people within the state that from a polling standpoint still have some issues with what he's accomplished so far. And being governor under COVID has not been an easy task. I certainly wouldn't want it, and I know how difficult it has been just to be mayor. So that I can't even consider how hard it would have been to be governor. And and of course later this week, the state legislators announced that they will actually be working on reform to the recall process. So whether or not that's increasing the barrier, the number of signatures required to have a recall election. They couldn't really do this after Governor Schwarzenegger was elected, from a losing standpoint, that would have been very difficult to do, and very difficult to do politically. But now that they've won, it's now looking at from a recall, what barrier, what's the thresholds as far as the number of signatures, what happens from a vote standpoint. Does the lieutenant governor become governor? Does is it a higher percentage, or the lieutenant governor become governor? There's multiple things that should be done. But California estimated spending $270 million on this special election, just to have things kind of continue as they have been. And then on Tuesday night, there was a study session on short-term rental ordinance enforcement. And so council gave some feedback to staff on what could be done to increase enforcement, increase fines for short-term renters that aren't basically following the city guidelines. And so this is, short-term rentals should only be done from a hosted standpoint, but there are bigger things also. Everyone's probably heard about the shooting that happened at a party. So it was someone from outside of the city in the Bay Area locally that rented one of our Sunnyvale houses, and there were about 150 teenagers, young adults there. Before the police showed up, there was a shooting, and so it was that sort of thing of how you, and ultimately the owner wasn't even living in Sunnyvale, and so it's trying to make sure that short-term rentals are following the appropriate rules. That being said, of course, it's not easy because Airbnb works well with residents, with the cities, but there's so many other short-term rental companies that don't work well with the city and aren't as open as far as informing the renters, informing those people that are renting out their place, what the city rules are. And then, of course, we also approved the Lawrence Station plan. So it's an update to the Lawrence Station specific plan, as well as the EIR. And this included, and from an EIR standpoint, adding additional units. And so this is adding 3,600 additional units to look at housing at Lawrence Station. And Santa Clara has already added quite a few units. There's been several affordable housing developments that are being done in Sunnyvale. So from that standpoint, but it kind of laid out a sense of place for that area, including how bikes and peds go through that area, adding incentives for merging different parcels, so to kind of create larger sites, and then working on what we can do for protected bike lanes, what we can do for additional office space there, and kind of getting a better sense of what that area looks like. And so we, over the last few years, we basically gave direction to increase the number of housing to be looked at that location, as well as added that sense of area, added several locations that are currently owned by Intuitive Surgical, so several properties from that standpoint. And ultimately, so we approved the Lawrence Station specific plan updates and that EIR. We also approved a new Intuitive Surgical headquarters and manufacturing building. So first the Lawrence Station plan, and then we went on to the Intuitive Surgical buildings. And so that was a headquarters as well on the north side of Kiefer. And then on the south side, it will be a new manufacturing building. And so this was positive because we worked out with the developer guaranteed sales tax revenue. They're looking at adding a BTA bus stop if needed. They're also, that project exceeded our reach codes as far as electric is concerned. They're looking at adding a recycled water line extension so that they're using recycled water on that site. And it's actually pretty iconic also. There's the north side of Kiefer and the south side of Kiefer, and they're looking at actually doing a pedestrian bridge between their buildings. So it is a very iconic vision of what that architecture looks like. So really interesting from that standpoint. Let's go ahead and get to the weekly COVID numbers. So from a national standpoint, things are stabilizing a little bit. From a national standpoint, we now have 41.5 million cases. So that's another 1 million new cases, pretty much the same as last week. We've also had 208 million vaccinated with at least one dose. So that's about 76% of adults that have received at least one dose, and 65% of adults are fully vaccinated. So that's positive from that standpoint. We still have people, of course, that are dying from COVID, and so we're now reached 666,000 deaths, and that's up more than 14,000 deaths in the last week. And we'd had 11,000 deaths from the week before. So we're having definitely more people die from COVID right now, and that's showing what those numbers are. And whatever we can do, please get vaccinated. Please wear your mask, and be safe when we're out in crowds, especially. From a California standpoint, we've had 4.3 million positive cases, with over 8,200 cases a day now. That's up from 7,500 last week. So those numbers continue to kind of edge upward slightly, and it's all because the Delta variant continues to spread. California has now reached 67,000 fatalities. That's increased about 700 in the last week. So it is, actually increased 700 to 900 in the last week. So definitely we are seeing, more people that are passing away because of COVID, and especially the Delta variant, and conceivably the Mu variant is out there too now. But on a positive note, we've had about 48 million vaccines administered, about 600,000 in the last week. We fell to number 10 on states with adults with at least one dose. So we're at 84% of adults with one dose, and we fell to number 17 on states with residents that are fully vaccinated. We're about at 68.8%, almost 69%. So we're close to 69%, probably 70 next week, hopefully, with adults that are fully vaccinated. And then from a county standpoint, things are looking better. Cumulative test cases, people that have tested positive for COVID-19 is up to 140,000. 139,000 is what it comes down to. That's up about 2,000 in the last week. And then that's about the same as the week before. So things are pretty stable. We've had 9 new deaths. So we're at 1,753 deaths in the county. And of course, from vaccination, we're still doing head and shoulders above so many counties in the state as well as the nation. 87.9% of the county age 12 and older, and this is 12 and older. Most states are just looking at adults, but 87.9% of those in the county 12 and older have at least one dose, and then 82.9% of those 12 and older are fully vaccinated. So it's really good from that standpoint, being close to 90% with at least one dose, and I'm guessing that we'll be topping that in the next few weeks. I continue to do a lot of advocating on our city's behalf. At the county level, I continue discussions with county health and our county supervisors. I met with Supervisor Smidian for lunch after his office hours last week. So we were at Dish Dash, of course, talking about what what the county can do for the city, as well as what I can do for advocating for some of the county efforts that are going on. So it was positive from that standpoint. For testing, from COVID's testing, you can find locations to get tested at sccfreetest.org. And of course, for getting vaccinated, you go to sccfreevax.org. And the county has multiple drop-in vaccination clinics around the county, walk-up locations. You can also set an appointment, so you can set up an actual appointment for when you want to go there. The county was vaccinating at our Daily Bread last week, and also our Hamlin shelter, our Sunnyvale shelter on Hamlin Avenue last week. The county will also have a pop-up at El Dorado Mobile Home Community happening in October. So lots going on from that standpoint. I wanted to announce some upcoming events. So tomorrow, September 18th, the Friends of the Sunnyvale Library will have its book sale from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And there, of course, there'll be their standard bag sale from 2 to 3 p.m. where you can get basically a grocery bag full of books for $5. This Sunday is a Slice of New York's anniversary, and it's kind of a two-part anniversary. So they'll have discounts all day, but it's a 15-year anniversary for their Santa Clara location. So that's on Stevens Creek Road. And then it's also the 10-year anniversary for their Sunnyvale location. So their Sunnyvale location actually had their 10-year anniversary in January, but ultimately they decided, with COVID and everything, they didn't want to have that celebration. Now that things are a lot more open up, they'll do kind of a simultaneous celebration on Sunday at a Slice of New York. And it's on El Camino Real. If you haven't been there, really good pizza, but it's right before you go into Mountain View, right at Bevmo Plaza. So they're having a celebration. There'll be $2 pizzas all day. There'll be 20% off all baked goods, free stickers, tattoos, a certain chance to win prizes. So come out. There'll be an event at 1 p.m. So I think it's a pizza dough cutting. It's not a ribbon cutting for a pizza place. It's a pizza dough cutting. So that'll be kind of a social distance event from that standpoint. But it'll be a celebration all day long. Come on by. Thank them for their 10 years of being here in Sunnyvale. And then, of course, Monday is the beginning of autumn. So summer is over. The days are definitely getting a lot shorter very quickly. Fall is just about here, and the vernal equinox is on Monday. So we're down to 8 hours of light, or sorry, we're down to a lot less light. 12 hours of light a day now, and hopefully we'll get through this quickly, but definitely we're seeing the days get a lot shorter as far as that's concerned. And then Monday is the beginning of autumn. Next Thursday, and actually I haven't talked about this before, but next Thursday is a virtual meeting to learn about changes on how the city reviews housing projects. So this will be a virtual meeting, 6 p.m. Thursday night, September 23rd. And, the standards for how the city uses reviews of housing developments needs to be changing. And this is, new standards that we'll be putting in place so that there will be less, I'll say, personal judgment done from a planning commission standpoint, as well as from a staff and a council standpoint from that standpoint. And so the state is requiring changes to address, California's ongoing housing shortage. And so they've passed certain laws over the last few years. And so Sunnyvale will develop new standards. So these are objective standards with a team of planners and architects. Our goal is to have standards that support diverse, high quality housing here in Sunnyvale. But it's really important that, people get educated and give feedback. You can take part in this process. There's several new state bills, or several that have been approved, over the last few years, SB 35, SB 330, and that we need to deal with what our response is going to be. And, several bills were signed just this week, specifically SB 9 on how residents can, in single family neighborhoods, split lots. All those are kind of in the air as far as what our response is going to be. So we need a difference in kind of, educating residents and then getting their feedback on our existing design priorities, the differences between objective and subjective design standards, and, how we'll apply kind of these new standards to Sunnyvale. So, I've heard from residents that's like, oh, we really like this architecture, or we really dislike this architecture. So, I'm trying to make certain, especially architectural design elements required. I think that's really important, making, objective standards of this is what's required. And we have that for single family residences, but it's also trying to make sure that whatever we do, it's very specific. And, and if developers are going to streamline projects, making sure that we have appropriate control of what the final product looks like, which is really important. And then on Tuesday, September 28th, City Council will be moving and will be meeting on several different things, but the biggest thing is a proposal to remove specific parking along Sunnyvale Avenue and install bike lanes from Maud to Hendy. And so that came in front of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advocacy Commission last night, and then it'll come back to City Council on the 28th. And then we're only a few weeks away, October 2nd and 3rd. So that first weekend in October is the Sunnyvale Art and Wine Festival, and it's been downsized a little bit, but it will have art from from people that will be there from around the state. But they'll also be highlighting Sunnyvale artists. So that'll be actually good, so that you can go there and buy some local art. And then ultimately, we'll have, the wine portion also. And most of the food will be local restaurants, so that's also positive. And then finally, of course, one of the big things is there will be music, but there will only be one big band, one each day. So one on Saturday, one on Sunday, although there will be kind of a DJ stage going on to kind of add music to that the entire time that weekend. So looking forward to that coming to Sunnyvale after a while now of not having that. So it's good to have that event, and it's not a summertime event now. It's a fall event, at least for this year. But I'm sure so many people will be happy to kind of get out there and have kind of a touch of what it used to be prior to the pandemic. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. Susan asked, any updates on our Target store reopening? Well, Target released a press release about 3 weeks ago now that they would, that store would be closed until next year. City staff has been working with them, trying to, see what we can do to kind of move that forward. They've now started taking it, and this was some ceiling panels that fell down, but when they did further inspection, they saw that there were issues conceivably with some of the fire retardation elements that were in the ceiling, and so making sure that all those elements were safe, and making sure that it's safe if there was ever a fire. So they ultimately decided that they wanted to replace that whole fire system within the rooftop of that. The good news is, they've submitted their building permits to city staff, and city staff is currently reviewing that. We think that they'll be open before Thanksgiving, so kind of shorting that period. And you've already seen them starting work, tearing down, taking down all that equipment. So, from that standpoint, things are really moving forward quickly. So keep your fingers crossed. It looks like we'll probably miss Halloween, but Hopefully we won't miss Christmas. And I know I've heard from so many people that that's really changed their shopping habits. So people, a lot of people just go to Target, multiple times a week whenever they have a need. And then Hugo asked, why do Sunnyvale City projects take so long? Washington Park, Matilda, the viaduct on Matilda near Home Depot. I think he actually meant the Fair Oaks location near Home Depot. Or viaduct on Matilda, maybe the Fair Oaks near Home Depot. So I get this question a lot. Government moves slowly, and as much as we'd like it to go faster, and I definitely would like to see that, it's partially because of the bid process, but it's also it's important that we give the public a chance to weigh on things. So normally there's community input. We often study things before we get community input, and then it's conceivably deciding what we're going to do, and then it's getting funding, it's doing final designs, it's doing bids for construction. All those have certain time periods associated with it, and then finally moving to the actual implementation. So the swim center took about 1.5 years from when it broke ground. Similarly, City Hall is taking about 2 years to actual doing construction, but it takes years of community outreach, design, weighing, environmental impact depending upon what the projects are. The Fair Oaks Bridge is finally, that will be opening before the end of the year, so that's a positive thing. Sometimes it's delayed. We didn't want to shut down the Washington Park swimming center until after a summer period, and so it's trying to figure out when's the appropriate time to shut those things down. And then it's also sometimes it's jurisdictional. So when we started looking at the Fair Oaks Bridge, it was dealing with Caltrain. So if we own all the rights away, then it's not a problem. But when you start looking at like the Stevens Creek Trail, it's Mountain View land, it's Sunnyvale land, it's Valley Water land. And making sure that each of the jurisdictions are completely on board with what needs to get done. And so that approval process sometimes adds to that cycle. I definitely like things to move a lot faster, but there's a process, and normally that's a slow process. So it's easier when it's all on Sunnyvale land, but even then, it's making sure that people get the appropriate, feedback, doing the appropriate studies. It's like for adding bike lanes on Sunnyvale Avenue. Staff did a lot of research on how many cars are parked, during the daytime, during the nighttime, looking at, until, even late at night. So like 1 a.m. And looking at, what parking is on Sunnyvale Avenue, other streets around there, collecting all that data, presenting it to the public, to the BPAC, to City Council. So all those things takes time. It's study, it's do community outreach, it's making a decision, and then doing final design, and sometimes even getting the funding for that implementation takes a while, much like grade separation, much like all the different things. Lawrence Station Plan took multiple years before we decided what needed to get done, how to make it safer for bikes and peds. All those projects, they don't move quickly, and that's sometimes it's a bad thing, but usually it's a good thing because people have had their chance to be part of that process and conceivably point out some changes that might make a project better. All those are part of our process, and I sometimes worry that it doesn't go fast enough, but it is our process as it's currently defined. Leslie asked, are there any plans to keep the downtown pedestrian only after the pandemic? We went downtown for dinner last night, and it was so pleasant to have the whole street blocked off. So yes, we've temporarily closed it until the end of the year. We'll be starting a study issue next year to talk about what that permanent closure looks like. It isn't as easy, much like the answer to the last question. There's state funds that we need to talk about. There's fire safety. There's making sure that the businesses are on board. So that's one of the best things you can do is tell your businesses that you love being downtown. You know, I was had lunch with Supervisor Simidian last Saturday for lunch, and you know, at Dish Dash, and it was great to see, you know, all the people out there on you know, outdoor eating. There were some people inside, of course. You know, it's actually hard to get a seat, especially summertime, during lunchtime at times. And so it was good to actually be out there, and I think it's a very positive sort of thing. We'll be reevaluating that, you know, later this year, but I think it's been good from that standpoint. And so yeah, tell your businesses that you like the street being closed. You know, you can always email council at sunnyvale.ca.gov. You can tell the city manager, so kind of telling staff at citymgr@sunnyvale.ca.gov. That positive feedback is always really important, but it starts at your businesses, and I think that's the critical thing. Let's see. Penny asked, there are many public places that water too much, too many. There are many residents that are being watering too much. That water is running down the drain. Who can we talk to fix this when we see excessive watering? So the Valley Water waste inspectors, water waste inspectors respond to reports on water waste and violations of local water use restrictions. So to report that, there's several things you can do. You can download their app. So there's an Access Valley Water app, and you can go there and talk about, you know, search for water waste, and it will tell you how to report things. I think you can even take a photo or something of that nature. But the easy thing to do, you can call 408-630-2000 to report that, or you can email waterwise, WATERWISE, at valleywater.org, and there you can kind of report exactly what you need to do. Whatever you see, you can basically, you know, have their water waste inspectors come out and talk to the resident, talk to the business. Stephen asked, I have been waiting on Awani to make a right turn on the Matilda, and people have been honking at me to go. But there is a sign there that says no turn on red. What can be done? And so, yeah, I talked to city staff about this. They are working on this problem. There's one sign, and it's before you actually get to that intersection. So it used to be you could turn on red from Awani onto Matilda, going north on Matilda. But with the, let's say, the fixing of the Matilda Monster and kind of how those new lanes are set up, there was no right turn on red is the new requirement, because people are basically cutting on to the on-ramp of 101 right in front of that light. So to make it safer, it was making no right turn on red. That being said, some people have seen the sign, some people haven't, and I've heard from, you know, people that they've had irate people go around them, turning from the left-hand turn lane because they're sitting there waiting for the light to turn. So city staff is working to add more signage there at these signals, and that should be coming up sometime in the next month or so. So hopefully that problem goes away as quickly as possible. We'll see how that goes. Kathleen said, what is happening with the decision for Sunnyvale Avenue between Maud and Evelyn? And I get this, we've gotten lots of emails from residents to city council, both against and for removing parking along that corridor. You know, as I said previously, you know, the BPAC had their meeting last night, and it comes to council on the 28th. So if you want to be part of that discussion, you can join that meeting that evening. You can also, you know, definitely send emails to council as far as that's concerned. And I think that's all for the questions up to now. Let me see if there's any new questions in the chat. No, I don't see anything new. Oh yeah, you mentioned. So Shane asked, you mentioned that a while back the city is partnering to get Target reopened again. How's that going? Is it still planned to be open by the holiday season? I hope so, Shane. I hope so for everyone's interest. I definitely think it's in the city's best interest. It's in the residents' best interest, and of course, Target also. Luckily, they've moved their employees to other locations. So that's actually been, they didn't just fire those employees or lay them off. So that's been positive, but it is going to be a while, and I'll have more information once city staff finishes their permits. I'm hoping, and I've reached out to Target, I haven't heard back yet. I'm hoping that it opens, hopefully by the end of October, but no, keep your fingers crossed as far as that's concerned. Let's see. Is there an online, so George asked, is there an online status page that tells current estimates for the city center renovation completion? No, George, but it is moving forward. That, from a positive standpoint, the city hall and the addition onto public safety should be open by the end of 2022. So just over a year away, and city staff should be moving into those buildings by the end of next year. So it's taking a while. Definitely, they finished. I thought once we finished the steel framing, things would be pretty much complete, and they would start closing up the building. Actually, there's a lot more work, as you see, that's been done since finishing that steel framing, and so that's continued. From that standpoint, it's looking good, and they hopefully will be closing that up in the next few months, and then starting to work on the interior of the building. But that's the plan by the end of next year. So things are looking good as far as that's concerned. And let's see. Oh yeah, and so another question from TB. Not sure if I missed an update, but I'm wondering if there's an update on the Washington pool. Yes, the Washington pool has been delayed a little bit more. As far as I heard last, it's supposed to be opening on Monday. So September 20th was the last thing I saw on the city's website. I haven't checked back earlier this week. There were some final things that, every time the county inspectors come out from a health standpoint, they had a few items. The developer, the contractor has been working on those items. So hopefully, fingers crossed, and I know that city staff has been trained. The water's ready from a pH standpoint. City staff has been trained to get ready for that, but ultimately, it should be very close to actually being open sometime next week, is my guess, and I'm looking forward to it in a big way. So I'll hopefully be telling you next Friday that the Washington Park Swim Center is officially open. So everybody's looking forward to that. That looks like all the questions that I have for this week. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for joining me again this week. I'm always proud of Sunnyvale's response, especially over the last year and a half to the pandemic, but always, the future continues to be uncertain, but your response really makes a difference. New issues come up, almost every day, but Sunnyvale has really pulled together and made a difference, built community, and I'm really proud of all that. So if go ahead and if you get your vaccination, if you haven't, always wear your mask. If you're indoors, of course, if you're out in public and feel unsafe, but continue to help rebuild our community wherever you can. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We are in this together, and we will get through this together. Thanks again for listening. Have a great weekend. It's our last weekend of summer. And until next week, I'll say goodbye. Take care. Goodbye.